Thank you.
Well, Bill 2 did die on the order paper just shortly before the election was called. I think because of the grassroots response from homeschooling parents and parents and teachers who have their children in faith-based schools and people who have their kids in other optional education opportunities. Bill 2, however, did have a clause that would put homeschooling parents and teachers in faith-based schools at risk of being hauled in front of non-judicial administrative human rights commissions, where they would be first presumed guilty and then have to pay to defend themselves and their reputations and justify their choices for their children or for teaching their children in accordance with their beliefs and their principles.
As a teacher, let me tell you, first of all, Ms. Stubbs, with all due respect, you need to read the bill. And secondly, what that bill said, when you look at the amendments that were trying to be passed at the end, that parents were the authority, that the opt-out clause is there whether you're in a public school or you're being homeschooled. The wording is different in a homeschool because the homeschool parent actually decides what the child gets to learn, and that opt-out clause allows that parent not to teach courses on religion or sexuality, etc., that might be in the curriculum and it may not meet the standards, the ethics, the morals of the family. The parent is the final say.
Your party forms the government, whether majority or in a minority. How do you propose to change the funding model for policing in Alberta to be more equitable for all municipalities?
This has been an ongoing challenge for rural communities, for the communities that are 5,001 and suddenly arbitrarily have to cover all the costs for their policing. So it has been a long time challenge. I would suggest that this might be one of those issues for which we need a new government to actually get the job done. And I agree with you.
What will you do to end the corrupt practice of the progressive conservatives of soliciting and accepting money from non-political public organizations such as municipalities, universities, and other local bodies? So Jackie, will have you respond to that first and then we'll figure it out from there.
That's why I want to go to be your MLA, because I don't think that things have been all above board. And it's not just a single party. There is a candidate running for another party in Westlaw who accepted donations from their municipality. So it's got to stop. We have to have a clear and transparent way of dealing with that.
Well, this issue is symptomatic of what happens when a party's been in power for more than 4 decades, completely unchallenged. The vested interests and entitlement and connections are deep, pervasive, and they run through all levels and all over the province.
I'll echo Shannon's statement with the best way to end corruption in the government is to change the government. We've had a government that's been in power for 40 years. And I've said this before, that's longer than I've been alive. In my opinion, that's too long for a government to be in power. Even if it was an NDP government, I would echo the same situation.
The question wants your thoughts on Danielle Smith defending the comments of blog postings by candidate Huntsberger. Do you agree with the position taken by your leader on defending the comments made by candidate Huntsberger in his blog?
Our party believes in freedom of religion, and freedom of conscience, and freedom of speech, and freedom of thought, and freedom of expression. And our party has people with a diversity of views, with deeply held faith-based perspectives, and he was speaking as a pastor on his blog, and he has the right to do that. That's why our leader would not throw him under the bus for stating his personal opinion. We would defend his right to do that, just like I would defend the right of each and every one of you to talk about and to express the thoughts and the values and the beliefs that you hold.
What we have to be careful, though, with is that what people say, particularly in the positions that they hold, honor and respect each and every individual. Yeah. You know what? If you're looking to be in a leadership position, you're going to have to watch what it is you say.
I understand people have their religious views and freedom of speech, freedom of expression. But what this man said about lesbians and gay people, it sounded dangerous. It sounded like it was filled with hate. Your leader should have thrown him under the bus.
Chris, would Alberta benefit from the proposed $300 energy dividend, and would you support this idea? So it's addressed to Chris, but I suspect all candidates would like to weigh in on that.
I don't believe that giving Albertans a $300 check is going to benefit anyone. Not even giving all of us a one-time check. I would rather see this money invested in the essential institutions that we need. We need this money invested in healthcare. We need this money invested in education. It's been argued that a $300 check would go to benefit students. It would help your rent. It would help everything. But this is one check. We need the proper investment in the institutions that run the province.
This $300 energy dividend, it feels like a little bit of an attempt at a bribe. Maybe when it's $3,000 a year for every Albertan, then we can discuss it. So keep that number in mind, 3,000.
The government has never had a plan to manage our surpluses. That's why our province has a track record of swinging wildly between spending crazily in good times and then slashing and burning in bad times, which has led to infrastructure deficits, backlogs in communities, unpredictable and inconsistent services and programs. We believe corporate welfare, millions of dollars wasted in perks and pays for MLAs, millions of dollars wasted on things like renovating MLAs' offices that are not necessary, need to be cut so that funds can be directed to the priorities. This is what we're proposing. 50% of all surpluses will be being mandated to be put in the Heritage Savings Trust. 10% of all surpluses will be shared directly, no strings attached, with towns and cities across the province. This is the proposal that municipalities have made so that they have more funds directly in their communities. 20% would be dedicated to an energy dividend fund that would be allowed to grow to $750 million. It's not an instant thing. This is done in Alaska and in other oil-producing jurisdictions. Once it reached $750 million, then dividend checks could be issued to every Alberta man, woman, and child resident in Alberta for 3 years tax-free. These look to be projected to start at about $300. The checks in Alaska are between $2,500 and $5,000 on an annual basis.
So the question was, what do we think of the $300 dividend check? I would agree with you, Chris. I think you said it sounds like a bribe. When we're talking about infrastructure deficit, we don't want to cut infrastructure spending further and put ourselves back even more so. There was a sustainability fund that was created to be able to add to our infrastructure when things got rough, and we need to continue to build that sustainability fund. What we can't do is be taking money out of that system to give you a $300 check so that you can go buy your television that was made in China. When you can't be announcing that you're going to give a $300 check, oh, but if you read the fine print, after we pay for healthcare, after we pay for education, like my mom said, she said, Gordon, we won't have to worry about this $300 check. We won't be here. So let's take care of business first and foremost, and then let's talk about how we can have all Albertans share in that wonderful dividend.
Why was there a limited freeze put on rising power bills after the election was called? What will happen to power costs after the 23rd? What's your guarantee on that?
My guarantee is to represent the residents and to make sure that that study is taken care of and that we look at both the regulated portion, which is your power lines, your line losses, your administration fees, and to take a very good hard look at what the AUC is allowing utility companies to bill for and add that 9% to. We need, you know what, because they buy a garbage can, that doesn't mean they should be able to add 9% to it. So let's take a good hard look, and that's part of the overall review, and I support that, and I will be there to look at that with a fine-tooth comb. We've committed to a full review of the way the system works, the way electricity is bought, sold, and distributed
across the province to fix this system and to keep power bills low for all Albertans. But the government's not actually going to be able to deliver on its commitments to keep the power bills low as long as they proceed with Bill 50, which is why we would repeal that bill. The government has guaranteed utility companies a 9% rate of return. They're constructing these power lines at cost plus. There are no cost controls in the legislation. So the initial deal was $16 billion of your taxpayer dollars, but we actually have no idea how expensive these power lines that haven't been proven to be needed are going to cost. And it's just unbelievable that a deal has been struck with utility companies where there is an 8-fold expansion of our transmission capacity, not ever done in any other jurisdiction, for lines that haven't been proven to be needed, paid for completely by each and every one of you, that the utility companies will then own and bill you for.
This next specific question is addressed to Shanna Stubbs. Wildrose introduced a child activity tax credit as part of the family pack. However, it is only applicable to families that make over a certain income threshold. What is the purpose of a credit if it does not help those families most?
Yeah, it works the same way the tax credit that the PCs have proposed, and the way that tax credits do work. So I appreciate the sentiment and the question.
Quick response to that: not all PC refunds or tax credits are based on how much you make. If you take a look at the seniors $500 credit, it doesn't matter what you make, you get it. So not all PC credits are as you have said. Thanks.
Bill 36, and it says under Bill 6, supposedly a fix for Bill 36, the question is, what real legal power does the property rights advocate that's created in Bill 6 have in reversing the decision that the government has made?
Well, this bill to fix another bill, we should be getting things right in the first place. This just, too much bureaucracy, and it's wasting our taxpayer dollars, so let's try and do things right in the first place.
Well, I agree with Matt. The problem is that we have a government that violated and evaporated property rights under Bill 19, Bill 36, Bill 24, and Bill 50 in the first place. It is a fix to make it look like landowners have an option. Really, the office would be providing them assistance, but it doesn't have actually any legislative ability to fight for them. So we would, just to be clear, repeal all of the land laws that have been passed and do a review of other legislation to also ensure that property rights haven't been undermined in other areas. We would restore the Expropriation Act to take place in situations where landowners' property is required for public infrastructure, for public projects.
When people throw words around like restore Expropriation Act, the Expropriation Act has been there since the 1960s and didn't disappear. You need to be reading it in black and white. And I agree. I wish we could always get things right the first time, but if we don't get them right, then we've got to change them. And we can't be so blinded to not look at making changes because our egos are going to get in the way. We need to listen to the people and we need to make the changes. And you need to look at Bill 6 and you need to take a look at what those changes are. The changes to Bill 19 have restored your rights under the Expropriation Act. It's there. It's not my words, it's somebody else's words. And so we need to be reading that. As far as the advocate, you don't want one person to have the power. You want to be able to go to the courts, or you want the entire legislative assembly to have to discuss that in public. You would be outraged if one person could change the laws of the land. And so we don't want an advocate to do that. We want an advocate to be there to help you, educate you through the process, and be able to direct you in the right way so that you can fight for yourself. We have had this advocate, a position similar to that, in Strathcona County for about 4 years. It was proposed by the farmers in the area because they have had such issues with pipelines and going across their property. They needed help. That's what this person is there to do.